Shalom Aleichem, Assalamu Alaikum. This is the video on the introduction to the book of Chronicles. The reason why is obviously you can see the letters up top. You are not hallucinating. That does say something really long. In Greek, it's ancient Greek. It is pronounced Paraleipomenon. Paraleipomenon. So let's read these tabs and understand why are we going to call this book Paraleipomenon. Okay, so the two books of Chronicles are actually one work. They're treated as one book in the Hebrew manuscripts and in the Masoretic summary. The division was first made in the Septuagint. Why? For the sake of convenience, and thence was adopted into the Latin Bibles. The Hebrew text was first divided in Bomberg's edition of the Rabbinic Bible, 1516. Moreover, there is a probability that Paraleipomenon originally formed part of a larger work, which included the two books of Esdras. For not only is there a similarity of diction and style, of spirit and method, but first Esdras begins where second Paraleipomenon ends, the decree of Cyrus being repeated and completed. Spoiler alert. It should be remarked, however, that these facts can be explained by simple community of authorship. Is that community or continuity? Anyway, in the Septuagint and Vulgate, as well as in the Protestant Bibles, the books of Paraleipomenon are placed immediately after the books of Kings. In the printed edition of the Hebrew Bible, they stand at the end of the third division, or Ketuvim. Next tab, from encyclopedia.com. Paraleipomenon, say that 10 times fast, or 1st and 2nd Chronicles, are the names given to the two books, originally one, that recount the history of the chosen people from a post-exilic viewpoint, tracing it from Adam to the Edict of Cyrus in 538 BC, but concentrating mostly on the history of the Judean monarchy. Palestinian Jews and Hebrew printed Bibles called these books Sefer Divrei Hayamim, a title idiomatically equivalent to Annals or Happenings of the Times. Greek-speaking Jews in their Septuagint, followed by the Vulgate and some modern editions, referred to these books by the name Paraleipomenon, which the fathers of the Church understood as designating the book's content, things omitted from previous biblical histories. Some scholars, however, prefer to translate Paraleipomenon as things transmitted. St. Jerome, in his Prologus Galeatus, says that these books are a chronicle of the whole of divine history, with which phrase the modern appellation of these books, Chronicles, agrees. For these books themselves, see Chronicler Biblical. Okay, so that's that tab. We'll look at Wikipedia, not the greatest source, but let's just read the intro paragraphs. Book of Chronicles, the Book of Chronicles, Words of the Days in Hebrew, Divrei Hayamim, is a book in the Hebrew Bible, found as two books. Chronicles is the final book of the Hebrew Bible, concluding the third section of the Jewish Tanakh, the Ketuvim. It contains a genealogy, starting with Adam, and a history of ancient Judah and Israel, up to the Edict of Cyrus in 539 BC. The book was translated into Greek and divided into two books in the Septuagint in the mid-3rd century BC. In Christian contexts, Chronicles is referred to in the plural as the Books of Chronicles, after the Latin name Chronicon, given to the text by Jerome, but is also referred to by its Greek name as the Books of Paraleipomenon. In Christian Bibles, they usually follow the two books of Kings and precede Ezra, Nehemiah, the last history-oriented book of the Protestant Old Testament. Okay. The first book of the Chronicles, or Paraleipomenon. The argument. The Jews comprehend both these books in one, which the Grecians, because of length, divide into two, and they are called Chronicles because they note briefly the histories from Adam to the return from their captivity in Babylon. But these are not those books of Chronicles which are so oft mentioned in the books of the kings of Judah and Israel, which did at large set forth the story of both the kingdoms, and afterward perished in the captivity, but an abridgment of the same, and were gathered by Ezra, as the Jews write, after their return from Babylon. This first book containeth a brief rehearsal of the children of Adam unto Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and the 12 patriarchs, chiefly of Judah, and the reign of David, because Christ came of him according to the flesh. And therefore it setteth forth more amply his acts, both concerning civil government, and also the administration and care of things concerning religion, for the good success whereof he rejoiceth, and giveth thanks to the Lord. The last entry we will read is from Britannica.com. Books of the Chronicles, 2 Old Testament books that were originally part of a larger work that included the books of Ezra and Nehemiah. These 3, Ezra and Nehemiah, were one book in the Jewish canon. These 3 were the final books of the Hebrew Bible. Together they survey Israel's history from Adam to the activity of Ezra and Nehemiah in the period after the Babylonian exile, 6th century BC. The uniformity of language, style, and ideas marks the work as the product of a single author, known as the chronicler, who probably lived about 350 to 300 BC. The material of the Chronicles lists genealogies from Adam to King Saul and covers the death of Saul and the reign of King David, the reign of King Solomon, and from the division of the monarchy into the northern and southern kingdoms to the end of the Babylonian exile. The chronicler used the Old Testament books of Samuel and Kings as sources for his historical account, freely modified to accord with the chronicler's own interests and point of view. Nothing is admitted that would lessen David's glory, but much is added to enhance it. For example, he is given credit for making preparations to build the Temple of Jerusalem, though according to 1 Kings 5-7, it was Solomon who planned and built the temple. Solomon is likewise glorified, and unfavorable aspects of his reign, as viewed in 1 Kings 11, are omitted. The chronicler's single-minded interest in the temple causes him to omit mention of the palace built during Solomon's reign. The history of the divided monarchy is especially noteworthy because the chronicler excludes almost all material from the books of Kings concerning the northern kingdom of Israel. Obviously, his interest was centered on the southern kingdom of Judah, ruled by the house of David and site of the Temple of Jerusalem. The genealogies in 1 Chronicles 1-9 also serve the chronicler's interests, for they are designed to show that the true Israel came to be realized in the kingdom of David. In the rest of his work, the chronicler also shows that he was interested in institutions that provided for the continuity of the true Israel, the Temple of Jerusalem, and the Davidic dynasty. The historian thus uses even genealogies to serve an important function in the presentation of his people's history. The writer's concern about the true Israel is not surprising, for the reconstitution of Israel's life after the Babylonian exile required a redefinition of Israel's identity. This restatement was especially important since the deportation policies of Assyria for the northern kingdom in 721 BC and Babylonia for the southern kingdom in 597 and 586 BC had introduced alien peoples and religious practices into the Israelite scene. The chronicler's decision to ignore the northern kingdom almost entirely indicates his bias against the Samaritan community in the north. Okay, so that is the introduction to the book. I don't normally do this, but I wanted to explain why. You will see this title at the top of the screen as long as we're covering the books of the Chronicles. However, in the thumbnails, they will not say Paraleipomenon. That would alienate a lot of people, so I will put the proper name, or not proper name, the usual name, Chronicles. Thank you very much for your time. We'll see you in chapter 1 of first book of Chronicles, aka Paraleipomenon. Shalom Aleichem, Assalamu Alaikum, Irini Mazisu, Pax Vobiscum, Peace be unto you, and Maranatha.